Hello, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Moore's October Rants. Today's episode is going to be titled Adulthood. I've been realizing more and more that in the United States, we're sold a very specific vision of what adulthood is supposed to look like. It's almost like there's a script handed to us before we're even old enough to question it. And the interesting part is that this script isn't universal. Far from it. When you talk to one person about what they believe an adult should be, they'll give you one definition. Then, you talk to someone else, and suddenly the definition shifts. It becomes obvious that adulthood is not a single, fixed idea, but a collection of personal, cultural, and societal expectations. Some people will tell you that an adult is someone who has a credit card, owns a car, goes to college, and carries a long list of responsibilities. They see adulthood as a checklist. If you don't have these items actively present in your life, they conclude that you're not really an adult. According to that mindset, adulthood is measured by possessions and obligations. A credit card equals maturity. A car equals independence. A college enrollment equals responsibility. And if you're missing any of these, you're somehow behind. But then you talk to someone else, and their definition is completely different. They'll say that adulthood is less about what you own and more about how you think. They'll argue that being an adult means being more responsible than a child, not in the sense of having more things, but in the sense of making wiser decisions. From that perspective, if you have a credit card, but you can't afford to use it responsibly, that doesn't make you an adult. What makes you an adult is the ability to look at that card and say, I can't afford this, so I'm not going to put myself into unnecessary debt just because society says adults should have credit cards. To them, that restraint is more adult than blindly following a societal expectation that leads to financial trouble. And honestly, that viewpoint makes a lot of sense. It's funny how everyone has their own opinion about what adulthood is supposed to be. Over time, I've noticed this especially when it comes to driving, owning a car, and having a license. Some people genuinely believe that if you don't have a car by a certain age, you're not an adult. They'll react with shock. Oh my God, you walk to work? You take the bus? You're a grown adult and you don't own a car or even a license? In their minds, that automatically disqualifies you from adulthood. But then you meet people who understand the reality of life in big cities. They know that in places with reliable public transportation, trains, buses, subways, and now Uber and Lyft, owning a car isn't necessary at all. In fact, it can be more of a burden than a benefit. For people in those environments, walking or taking the bus isn't a sign of immaturity. It's simply practical. It's efficient. It's normal. The problem is that many people don't think outside the small bubble they grew up in. They cling to the version of adulthood they were fed as children. They assume that what their parents told them is universally true. Parents often project their own expectations onto their kids. They'll say, an adult goes to college, or an adult gets a car, or an adult does this and that. And because they believe that's what adulthood looks like, they expect their children to follow the same path. But what people fail to understand is that adulthood looks different in every culture. In some cultures, you're considered an adult at 15. In many Latin cultures, boys are seen as men in their early teens, expected to take on responsibilities far earlier than in the United States. Then you look at a place like Korea, where you're not legally allowed to have sexual intercourse until you're 20. Their definition of adulthood is tied to entirely different milestones and restrictions. Even the ages we assign to things like voting, drinking, smoking, or other adult privileges vary wildly. In the United States, drinking and smoking used to be legal at 18. Now, both are set at 21. In Europe, it's 18. In Mexico, it's 18. Every society draws the line differently. These differences show that adulthood is not a universal truth. It's a cultural construct shaped by laws, traditions, and collective beliefs. And those laws are created by people voting, people who themselves have subjective opinions about what adulthood should be. That's why I think adulthood ultimately needs to be defined by individuals. And in many ways, it already is. People decide for themselves what kind of life they want to live. and what adulthood means to them personally. If you're comfortable not owning a car, that's valid. If you go to work, pay your bills, use a debit card instead of a credit card, and live your life responsibly, you might feel just as much like an adult as someone who owns a house, a car, and a stack of credit cards. And honestly, I've met plenty of people who have all the traditional markers of adulthood: credit cards, car payments, mortgages, families, and yet they have the mindset of a child. They don't understand how the world works. They don't think ahead. They don't take responsibility for their choices. It's ironic. They have all the external symbols of adulthood, but none of the internal maturity. That's something I've had to learn myself. Having adult responsibilities doesn't automatically make you an adult. There are people who don't fit the conventional image of adulthood, but are far more mature than those who do. Interpretations vary so much that the entire concept becomes subjective. One person will call you immature. Another will call you mature. It depends entirely on their worldview, their culture, their upbringing, and their expectations. Despite all of that, I consider myself an adult. I believe I make adult decisions. I live an adult life. And even if some people disagree, that doesn't change my reality. It's an interesting topic because it exposes how differently people view the same idea. Culture, society, and personal experience all shape what adulthood means to each individual. But at the end of the day, I'm happy with the decisions I've made as an adult. For the most part, I feel like I've chosen the path that makes sense for me. And I believe that, as an adult, I'm obligated to live the best life I can, even if my choices don't match what others expect. I didn't go the college route. I knew early on that it wasn't the right path for me. I saw how destructive college debt could be. I saw people borrowing money they clearly didn't have and then acting shocked when they were expected to pay it back. I knew that wasn't going to be a fruitful avenue for me. I preferred to finish high school, get a job, and start working like an adult in a way that made sense for my situation. In many ways, I was more of an adult back then than most people my age. I could see the long-term consequences of taking on massive student loans. I could see the path it would lead me down. And that ability to think ahead, to look down the road and make a decision based on the future rather than the moment, is a very adult thing to do. I made that choice for myself, and I'm still happy with it. People will always have opinions about college. They'll say, I should have gone. They'll say, having a degree is an adult thing. But that's their perspective, not mine. At the end of the day, I'm content with my choices. They can have their opinions, their negativity, their judgments. But I know I made better decisions than many people who are now drowning in college debt. And that, to me, is adulthood, making choices that align with your life, your values, and your future, regardless of what society tells you you're supposed to do. Anyways, thank you for listening to this episode of the Moore's October Rants. Signing out. Have a good one, guys. Goodbye for now.